The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me. Everything you think you know about evil is wrong. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:01 p.m. Wednesday, April 17th, and I'm going to do another podcast on the devil. And I'm referencing a chapter in my new book, which came out December 5th, available on Amazon. It's called The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me. I highly recommend you read it. And not just because I want to sell books. In fact, if you don't have the money, reach out at seenthattinker@gmail.com and I'll send you a free copy of the book. Because it's a very good interpretation of what's going on and what's been going on for the last 120 or 140 years. Because we're in the midst of an epic transformation now. And this is a man-made transformation, okay? This is about a group of people who have a desire and a vision for the future of humanity. And I don't know what to call them without sounding irrational, the entities or beings that they work with to create this goal, okay? Because it's not all just human beings. This is the truth of this planet, you know? There's all this information now about, oh boy, extraterrestrials. They've always been here. We've been under extraterrestrial rule since the beginning of this age, okay? And that's just the plain truth of it. I don't know why people have such a difficult time with this concept. I don't know why people think that David Icke is crazy. Buddha references the Naga, shape-shifting reptilians. Kabir, this is 2,500 years ago when Buddha wrote the sutras. Kabir references them again in the Anurag Sagar, a holy book for the Sikhs and practitioners of Sant Mat and some Sufi schools. Says the same thing, that the Naga have been here, and he said the only thing that would get the Naga off the planet is they can't tolerate a high human population. Okay, so this is right in the introduction to the modern introduction to the Anurag Sagar when they're talking about the 4 forms of sentient life on the planet. I can't remember them all. There's egg-born, which would be the serpents. There's water-born, which is another form of life. There's womb-born, which is us, and the mammalian class of animals. But we're talking here about sentient beings, okay? And sentient means like human beings, you know, enough self-awareness to know that you exist, okay? You can conceptualize yourself. Animals can't do that. All right, so let's get back to this. As I said in the last installment, all the devil does is open doors, okay? You have to walk through, and that's because this is a free will space. And just because you walk through a door the devil opened doesn't mean you lose your soul. It means you go through an experience. The experience may be negative. The experience may have consequences, but you go through the experience, okay? The devil's not a violator. He's a facilitator, a kind of life coach for souls who crave experience, okay? He's the experience guy, okay? The devil can age you 1,000 years in a weekend. He has that power. He loans it for interest. The devil is a part of everything that manifests here now. The God part came out of nature. The devil will come out of man. Humanity is the womb of the devil. It's a spiritual birth, a frontier broken in our minds. And when it happens, it will seem natural and good, very, very exciting at the beginning. As the rabbis say, sin is sweet in the beginning and bitter in the end. Now, we're all sparks from the one soul, okay? Our sparks go all over the universe and other universes. And this game in materialization, various stages of materialization, various densities of materialization. We're in the densest realm right now, which is the 3rd dimension. Very slow. You know, we walk at about 5 kilometers an hour. Okay, very, very slow down here in the 3D. And this is a learning frequency, you know, it's very slow, but this is spiritual kindergarten. That's why we don't get too many human beings walking on water or healing the sick, although they're there. They appear in every generation. You know, if you think Jesus is a one-off, you just haven't done any homework. You haven't done any spiritual research. Okay? You want to create a world in which the spiritual can exist. You can discern between right and wrong, and you can find your balance and ascend your consciousness back to the Creator. That's it. Okay? So the game is really kind of endless. Now, the Earth moved through a celestial time within which this galaxy has been placed in a spectrum of low frequencies. And this is where darkness, the devil, and many other things exist. This is the blood sacrifice. It is for the defilement, not for forgiveness of sins. Atonement is spiritual. Blood is physical. Before Christianity, it was just the darkness. And the darkness is God's bodega. He puts all his tools there. Our real path is light and dark. Neither one makes sense without the other. We can't really understand one without the other. You know, there's this popular concept in physics that darkness doesn't exist. It's just an absence of light. That is incorrect. When you understand darkness from the other side, when you examine it with your third eye, it's a living substance. Okay, there are entire life ecosystems living in darkness. You see, the human conceit is that if it doesn't look like us, it's not life. But life can take many forms. There's life in space. Okay, so there's that famous video from about 25 years ago of one of the space stations extending a tether line, and it's out about 1 kilometer, and they were shooting it with a camera that could see ultraviolet light, and all of these like circular objects like UFOs are going and checking out what the tether is. Okay, I think the proper way to think about space is like the ocean. Okay, if you don't go under with scuba gear, you're not going to know what's under there. Okay, but there's a whole ecosystem in the ocean, and that ecosystem is connected to our ecosystem on land. We wouldn't be able to live on land without the work that the ecosystem in the ocean does. For example, 80% of human oxygen comes from the ocean, from the greenery in the ocean. Not many people know that, you know, as people are protesting the cutting down of the Brazilian rainforest, which, by the way, I think is a viable protest, and I join it. I'm not trying to mock that in any way, shape, or form. But the simple truth is, most of our oxygen comes from the ocean. Okay, so this land-based ecosystem is based on the ocean ecosystem. The light-based ecosystem is based on the dark ecosystem, and the dark ecosystem is based on the light ecosystem. Okay, so duality goes beyond physicality. It goes into light and dark. Well, light and darkness is the very definition of duality, but life forms go into darkness, and darkness is a living reality in and of itself. It's an energetic presence. It's not empty. It's not empty. Okay, this is a great secret known to certain people who study these sorts of things, but it's not really what I would call public knowledge. Okay, so neither light nor dark makes sense without the other. Okay, the place we come to atop these two paths is agnostic to both, and there's a strange correlation between the advancement of consciousness and psychosis. That's a big line. There's a correlation between the advancement of consciousness and psychosis. Okay? As the intertwined light and darkness braid the rope by which we climb out of the pit, so too does it demand detachment. We gain a greater understanding of the necessity of evil. Okay, if anybody tells you that evil doesn't have a purpose, they just do not understand this cosmology. Now, Do not confuse what I'm saying with the endorsement of practicing evil yourself or becoming buddies with it or becoming buddies with darkness. This is not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying at all. Okay? But when you look at these things from a spiritual perspective, you come to understand that they're intertwined in a way. And the Creator did it that way for a reason. One of the hardest things for a seeker and a journeyman on the path back to God to accept are some of the more difficult things that are so far out the normal thinking about what God is and what creation is that they're hard to accept at times. Okay, now how would you come to these realizations? Well, you would come through spiritual practice, meditating a couple hours a day for a number of years. You're gonna, it's tried and true. Okay, nobody who has ever taken up the path of meditation, contemplation, sitting still, studying your inner life, your forehead, nobody who's ever done that diligently on a daily basis for years will tell you nothing happens and there's nothing there. A lot happens. There's a lot there. In fact, once you get into it, you start to realize that maybe the entire reason for the construction of a human being is the inner life, not this outer life we have with our, you know, families and businesses and ambitions and desires. Those things are all part of being human. But once the inner life wakes up in you, once the imagination awakens in you, and the inner life becomes real, you have to have a talk with yourself about what is more important, the inner life or the outer goals in this lifetime. I think that the ideal life is to try and balance the two, but sometimes it can be very difficult. And if forced to choose, I think the inner life is more important. If a higher percentage of people on this planet took up the inner life in sincerity, we would not have the problems and the imbalances we have on this planet right now. Okay? Everything would break down without darkness, and darkness is the grout that bricks our reality together. Okay? Our game as humans is to recover the perspective of soul. Okay? Soul is the being of being. Okay? And I am that I am is an egotistical statement. Okay? Not, again, the I am technologies are multi-dimensional. There's no doubt about it. But they don't get out of duality because you don't give up yourself. You have to give up yourself, your entirety of yourself, the entirety of your ego and concept of yourself to get out of duality. Okay. So when you get into meditation and you get into it at a deeper level where you're doing 1, 2, 3, or 4 hours a day, whether it's in a monastic setting or whether you're doing it on your own, you'll go into samadhis so intense that when you come out of the meditation, it takes a few seconds to remember who you are. You're, oh yeah, I'm so and so. Oh yeah, I'm here. Oh yeah, this is my house. Okay, it's kind of like Gandalf the White coming back in the Two Towers, and Aragorn and the elf and the dwarf tell him, "You are Gandalf," and he says, "Yes, yes, I remember that name." Okay, and then he tells them what happened. Okay, it's a little bit like that, not quite like that, but similar to that. But every time you go into samadhi, a little bit of you gets left behind, a little bit of your ego, and a little bit more of the divine replaces it. And you just keep building that on your whole life. And you may hit the totality of consciousness and you may not, but probably you'll pick it up in your next life. Okay? Because there would be a very, very strong inclination to go forward. Do you know that the only thing you retain life to life is your spiritual work, the progress you make on your consciousness and your relationship with the divine? That's the only thing that carries forward life to life in the reincarnation system. You can die a king and you could be worth, in today's dollars, billions of dollars in gold and silver. You could have 10 wives and 100 servants, and that all gets left behind when you die, right? You can't take it with you, and you can't manifest it in your life when you come back. Now that's a general rule. There are classes of dark practitioners on this planet, schools of dark practice that can, but I think they're coming to an end now, you know. So I don't think that they're going to survive what we're going through now, but it can be done but it's so remote and such a small part of it that I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. However, I will say this. Whenever you see something on the positive or the negative pole, realize it exists on the opposite end as well. So where do we get an example of conscious reincarnation? Well, we get it in the Tibetan culture, don't we? They are conscious reincarnators, okay? You can get to a level of consciousness where you remember your past lives. You can read the Akashic records, but there's no guarantee then that you'll be able to do it in your next life either. But the Buddhists, specifically the Tibetan Buddhists, they have a continuity of incarnation that's quite remarkable, okay? And so you see that we could say that's a positive example of retainment of self or some semblance of self through the reincarnation process, and it's kind of remarkable. So what I mean by the duality and the balance of the duality is if the Tibetans can do it, you can bet your last dollar that there are dark schools that can do it as well. Okay? This is another great secret on the planet, is that there are dark schools invested in power and control over this planet who are consciously reincarnating like the Tibetans. Okay? And my proof to you is nothing can stand alone. It has to be counterbalanced. Okay? Very fascinating stuff. So our game, again, as human beings, is to recover the perspective of soul. Okay? The being of beings. Okay? The pure being of what you are, the spark of the divine. And you live through that spark of the divine. You see life through that spark of the divine, and through that perspective and that elevated consciousness, you're connected with everything. There's no judgment. There's no good or bad. You're just connected with everything. And everything is understood to just be energy exchanges to produce experiences which accumulate to produce an advanced consciousness. Okay? May seem slow, may seem dull, may seem like very laborious, right? Like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. But this is the way it is. Okay? The simple prayer of greater good, remembered and applied to all decisions, is the way out. So you reach a point where everything you do should be for the greater good. Okay? Every decision you make is for the greater good. This is the way out, but you have to be sincere. A half-hearted person has never broken free of the grip of darkness. You have to master the higher good prayer, which is not a verbal prayer per se, but it's a practice of prayer, an active prayer. It's a behavioral prayer, okay? Where prayer is defined as the attempt to communicate with the divine. Every decision you make must be for the higher good of all involved. You cannot see anybody suffer or destroyed as a result of your decision. Their best good must be met as well. Now, sometimes the best good of somebody will involve some suffering. Okay? Drug addiction would be an example. You know, getting off of heroin is a very physical, taxing, and nauseating experience that will rack you right down to your bones. Some people commit suicide trying to get off heroin. And there's a lot of suffering, but it's for the greater good. It's for the betterment of you, right? So sometimes the decisions we make for the greater good may involve suffering. You have to be honest about that as well. There can be no exception. The process converts your own darkness into light. And you then realize what all mystics do, that God placed all his secrets in the dark. Make your peace with it and celebrate the wisdom you've gained. Everything we do, decide, and act upon lives in confederacy. We live in confederacy with unseen beings. Your decisions and actions determine the type of confederacy you have. Nobody is alone. Everybody has beings around them. They could be your spiritual guides, or if you screw up badly enough and your guides say you need a hard lesson, they may abandon you and then the demons come in. But something you did made it happen. There's no such thing as an innocent possession. Okay? One of the aspects of spiritual character is to take ownership of everything that happens to you. Don't blame it on somebody else. If the energy lands in your life, you are connected to it. There can be no accident. It's that simple. No whining, no procrastination, no activism. Nothing can change that. This should also be a measuring stick for you to understand how completely out of balance we are in the Western world now. Most of the world, but especially in the Western world. How completely out of balance we are. With the myth that we can control things, we can bring justice, we can bring social justice. There's no such thing as a victim. There's no such thing as justice. It's a human invention. It has no place in the divine realm. Okay? And the longer you whine about injustice, the more energy you waste in terms of getting back into the game of life and advancing yourself. Nobody's alone. That happens later, much later, when you start to rise up. Now realize that all the voices you've ever heard in your head are part of your confederacy. You might recall a parent or a teacher you admired, but that's just a psychic sheath. You don't know what you're really communicating with. The only way you can be sure is to do everything for good. And when in doubt, let the shortfall, if there is to be one, fall on you. I know this sounds antithetical to the capitalize and conquer economy which we're raised. But when you change your definition of profit in life, you change everything. So what is your definition of wealth in life? You know that old saying from the Bible, profit a man if he gain the whole world but lose his soul? In 2024, when you look at the way things are going, it could just as well be, what should it profit a man if he gain a guaranteed income and pension if he loses his soul? Because that's all it seems to take now to completely compromise people, to make them do inhuman things. It's my job, you know? It's my job. Whether that be a nurse putting something bad into somebody's arm, and it's even worse if they know it's bad, and they keep doing it. It's not an excuse to say, this is my job. I have to do this. This is my job. Can't do that. That's not the way spiritual economy works. Your physical survival is guaranteed, but realize you've made a micro contract with the devil when you did that. You have subcontracted with the devil. And you climb up the ladder of the organization that put you in that position, and you'll see a manifestation in human form of the real devil in the boardroom. Okay? The devil is many. The devil is most. I realize this might sound like a bit of a riddle or a Zen koan to a lot of you, but I know there's people out there understanding what I'm saying, getting it 100%, as though it's an articulation of something they've always known but never been able to lay words to. And that's because this topic has been dominated by clergy. And clergy are, well, I don't think I've ever met an enlightened clergy person, no matter what religion they, Baptist, Methodist, Mormon, they're good people, raise good families. The moral structure and the values in the religions are beneficial, but it certainly doesn't open consciousness up to the light of God. Let's be very honest about that, okay? So you climb to the top of those organizations, you'll find the devil in human form as well. Any organization, top of the Jewish world, you'll find the devil in human form. Top of the Vatican, you'll find the devil in human form. Top of the Mormons, you'll find the devil in human form. Disturbing. I know. Think about it. Do me that decency and think about it. The irony of our time is that we've never been more efficient, never more advanced, and never more productive than we are now. But the vast majority of people live in a quiet despair, unable to forecast by any means, and beset by worry and a plague of bad thoughts. It's all natural, or it was when the hurricane shook up Kansas. Now, it always happens in climate-controlled environments, man-made systems and industries, cities and suburbs. So if the storms are not real, then what causes the chaos? The devil energy. It's everywhere here, inside us, our culture, and our environment. It infects anything that comes here. It's a quantum energy, invisible and omnipresent. You can't escape it. The debts are recorded right into the fabric of this reality. And a carbon copy is made in the world above us for safekeeping. The debts can be called, extended, refinanced, and paid, but never forgotten. These are energetic debts, sin, if you will, karma, if you will, energetic debt, okay? If you take something that's not yours and somebody needed it to be well in their life and you cause them harm, you have an energetic debt with that person, okay? And it'll never go away, never. It could be 1,000 years later, both souls reincarnate 1,000 years later and that debt comes back and you have to pay it. And it may be more than the original tally, significantly more. The debts are forever. Now, the devil fulfills wishes that God ignores. He's a mirror of sorts. A check cashing service, if you will, payday loans, that sort of thing. Not paying your debt is the agreed upon manner, in the agreed upon manner, increases the presence of darkness in your life. It's the providence of the lender in this situation. Everything has been done by consent. What part of the contract did your heart not understand? Did you not understand you would never hear thunder again? Or see the magnificent lightning? You see it and hear it, but not the same way a person free of darkness does. The notes are changed before they touch your heart. See, I told you. He's a part of everything here. It all exists by his grace, and you're not going to get anywhere without that simple tribute. So don't tell me you don't worship the devil. You're just too obstinate and ignorant to acknowledge it. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review.